We think we know what prayer is. A whisper in the dark, hands clasped, words rising like smoke to an unseen sky. We imagine it as asking, begging, a plea flung upward to a throne lost in the clouds. And so we kneel, we speak, we hope someone listens. Sometimes we believe they do. Sometimes the silence feels heavier than stone. But what if everything we believe about prayer is wrong? What if prayer was never meant to be asking at all? What if it was not about words but about frequency? Not a ritual of the tongue, but a tuning of the soul. The ancients knew something we have forgotten, that the universe hums, that existence itself is vibration strings of energy, weaving the fabric of matter and mind. And in that vast sea of resonance, every thought, every breath is a ripple. To pray was not to plead, it was to align, to shape the ripple of your being until it sang in harmony with a greater chord. They called it many names, mantra, invocation, chant, but the essence was the same, to speak a sound, not for the ear of a distant god, but for the field of reality itself. Because sound is not mere noise, sound is geometry in motion, a wave folding and unfolding in the invisible architecture of the cosmos. And words, the true words, the names carved in the marrow of sacred tongues were keys, keys that turned locks in the deep mechanisms of being. This is why every tradition guarded its syllables like treasure, the aum of the East vibrating at the root of creation, the sacred names of the Kabbalists, shaped with breath and awe, the chants that shook the stones of Gothic cathedrals, their echoes spiraling upward through vaults like incense made of sound. Prayer was never random speech. It was code. It was the dialing of a number on the hidden switchboard of the real. But here is the tragedy. We forgot. We traded resonance for repetition, vibration for vocabulary. We mummified the living word in the tomb of routine, turned the key into a charm to wear on the neck, and wondered why the door stayed shut. Now, prayer is a monologue, a letter we drop into a cosmic mailbox without knowing the address. We speak, but we do not tune. We ask, but we do not align. And so the signal drifts, thin as smoke in a storm. The old ones would not recognize what we call prayer. To them, it was a device not of metal, but of mind. A technology more subtle than any machine, a system of breath, sound, and focused intention designed to bend the inner dial and lock onto a channel beyond flesh and space. When you prayed in the old way, you did not beg, you did not flatter, you did not grovel before an idol of power. You became the prayer, you became the signal. And when the signal was pure, the answering hum rose from the deep like a tide, and you knew connection was never a question of mercy, it was a question of resonance. But that knowledge lies in ruins now, buried under centuries of rote recitation and fear. We remember the gestures, the hollow syllables, but not the song. And yet, if you listen in the hush before dawn, in the chant of wind through broken stones, you can still hear it. A hum, a vibration threading the marrow of the world, calling you to remember that prayer was never about words. It was about becoming a chord in the vast symphony of being. We think language is for telling stories, for trade, for names scrawled on the dust of time. But the ancients saw something deeper. For them, the word was not a tool, it was a force. In the beginning was the Word, whispers the Gospel of John. Not metaphor, not poetry, a statement of ontology, that the root of being is not matter, but meaning a vibration coiled in silence that spoke itself into form. The Hindus said it too, Vak, the primordial speech from which worlds unfolded like petals from a hidden bud. And in the secret schools of Egypt and Sumer, priests shaped their mouths around syllables they claimed could turn the wheel of heaven. Why? Because they knew what we have forgotten. Sound is power. Not the sound of idle chatter, but of tones aligned with the secret ratios, the harmonic skeleton of creation. To utter a sacred name was to strike a chord in the invisible architecture of the cosmos. It was not about meaning in the dictionary sense, it was about resonance. Every vibration shapes matter. This is no metaphor, it is physics. Sprinkle sand on a metal plate, stroke it with a bow, and the grains leap into patterns. Geometry blooming from sound like frost on glass. So too the syllables of old, intoned with precision, breathed through ritual, were not prayers as we think of them. They were codes, keys designed to unlock the deep lattices of the real. The names of God were never casual. They were frequencies frozen in letters, glyphs, hiding ratios of power. To speak them without preparation was like touching a wire humming with lightning. It was dangerous, because the sound did not care about belief. It cared only about alignment. The Hebrews guarded the Tetragrammaton, a name so potent they dared not speak it. The Vedic seers gave mantras to initiates only after years of purifying breath and mind, not because of superstition, but because the signal needed a clear channel. A stained vessel distorts the note. A distorted note bends power into chaos. But what of now? We drown in words. They spill from screens, from tongues, an endless gray rain of chatter. But words without resonance are like broken strings, noise with no song. We mistake speech for sound, and sound for vibration, and vibration for life. But true sound is rare. It begins not in the throat, but in the marrow of being. The old prayers began in silence, because silence is the womb of tone. From that hush, one syllable would rise, slow as dawn, until its hum fused with the bones of the singer. And the singer was gone, only the sound remained, burning like a thread of gold through the fabric of the infinite. This is why the mystics said, when you pray, do not babble as the pagans do, not because repetition offends the heavens, but because repetition without resonance is dead. They were telling us, prayer is not about saying, it is about sounding. It is about tuning the harp of the body until it vibrates with the chord of the one. The word is older than speech, older than breath. It is not what you say. It is what you become when you shape yourself into a syllable of the eternal hymn. And perhaps this is the secret hidden in every sacred tongue, that prayer was never a cry across the void. It was the void singing through you, the infinite folding into form, the echo of creation rising from your chest like a spark leaping back to its star. If prayer was a device, how did it work? What was the hidden mechanism beneath the poetry of faith? Imagine the universe as a sea not of water, but of waves. Invisible tides rolling through fields of vibration so fine that matter itself is only their foam. Every thought, every breath is a ripple in that sea, but most ripples are weak, broken, collapsing before they can cross the distance between the shore of the self and the far horizon of the infinite. The ancients understood this. They knew the secret. To send a signal that reaches the deep, you cannot whisper. You must resonate. Resonance is not volume, it is alignment. When two strings hum at the same pitch, the song leaps between them like a bridge of light. When two minds hum at the same frequency, there is no distance, no barrier, only communion. Prayer, then, was the art of alignment, of tuning the instrument of the self until it vibrated in harmony with the great song. How do you tune a soul? through the same elements that tune any system: breath, rhythm, tone. Breath first, because breath is the hinge between worlds, between the visible and the invisible, the body and the subtle field. Control the breath, and you steady the mind. Steady the mind, and the noise subsides, revealing the clear channel beneath. The old prayers were built on breath, not rushed petitions, but measured currents flowing in and out like tides kissing a shore. Each inhalation gathering power, each exhalation shaping it into sound. Then rhythm, because the cosmos is patterned like a drum, heartbeats, orbits, tides, all pulse and sequences carved by the mathematics of mystery. To step into rhythm is to step into the current of order that flows through chaos like a hidden river. This is why chants repeat, not for the ear, but for the field. Repetition carves grooves in the fabric of perception until the mind falls into trance, and the prayer prays itself. And finally, tone. Not any tone, but the ones that echo the primal ratios, the octaves of sacred geometry translated into sound. A mantra is not magic because of its meaning. It is magic because of its music, its waveform folding the air into spirals that kiss the lattice of reality, like a key slipping into a lock. Do you see the pattern? Prayer was never about asking. It was about amplifying. You were the transmitter. The temple was the amplifier. The chant was the signal. And the God? Perhaps the receiver. Perhaps the field itself, the great net of being that vibrates when touched and answers in the only language it knows: resonance. Think of a radio. The music is everywhere, flooding the air in waves no eye can see. But without the right dial, without the exact frequency, you hear nothing. Prayer was the dial. Your breath turned it. Your tone fine-tuned it. Your attention that fierce, unwavering beam was the power that made the static fall away until the signal sang clear. This is why scattered thoughts kill prayer, why empty words fall like stones into silence, because the channel shatters when the mind fractures. Connection demands coherence, every fiber of your being humming as one note in the symphony of the absolute. The mystics called this ecstasy, not the ecstasy of pleasure, but of alignment so perfect that the self dissolves and only the song remains. And in that song, answers are not given. They are absorbed, not as words, as knowing instant, total, like light flooding a dark room and erasing every shadow in a single breath. So when you pray, remember, it is not about speaking louder. It is about sounding truer. It is not about asking for a gift. It is about tuning yourself to the frequency where the gift already exists. Because the device is not in your hands. It is your hands. It is your breath. It is your being. If prayer was the signal, where was the receiver? The old ones built them, not of circuits and copper, but of stone and silence. They called them temples, but these were not mere houses of worship. They were machines, colossal instruments tuned to the hidden harmonics of the earth and the sky. Look at their bones. The pyramids of Giza, rooted like mountains yet aligned to the belt of Orion with a precision modern engineers still marvel at. The ziggurats of Sumer, tiered like steps toward a frequency beyond air. The Gothic cathedrals, their spires clawing the heavens, their vaults humming with the mathematics of sound. Do you think this was decoration? Do you think this was chance? Number. This was design. Geometry as invocation, stone as a frozen song. The ancients understood resonance. They knew the earth is not dead rock, but a trembling harp strung with ley lines and magnetic cords. They placed their temples where those lines braided, where currents coiled like serpents under the skin of the world. Why? Because power pools in those places. Power that amplifies whatever enters its field: sound, thought, prayer. And so they built on those nodes, lifting towers of limestone and granite, stone that drinks vibration like a sponge and gives it back tenfold, spiraling it upward in helices of invisible fire. But the stone alone was not enough. It had to be shaped. Every angle, every curve sang. Walk into a Gothic nave. Whisper. The whisper flies like a bird to the vaulted roof, circles, returns amplified, cloaked in a resonance that makes it strange, makes it vast. This was no accident. The architects carved ratios into arches that mirrored the music of the spheres, the same harmonics Pythagoras traced on his monochord, the same laws that bind galaxies in their wheels of flame. The result? A chamber where sound does not die, where chant becomes thunder, and a single voice braided with geometry can shake the marrow of the stone. Now imagine hundreds of voices, chanting the same note, their breath braided in rhythm, their hearts hammering like one drum, the air thick with vibration, the walls pulsing like the ribs of a living beast. This was not worship. This was ignition, a signal arcing through matter into the hidden lattice of being. The temple was the transmitter, the priest was the operator, the chant was the code. And beyond, something listened, something answered. Even the light was part of the design. Sun spilling through stained glass, fractured into colors that struck the floor at angles measured by the mathematics of equinox and solstice. Every shaft a line of force, a finger of fire pointing to secrets frozen in the stone. And the floor patterned with labyrinths, spirals meant to mirror the pilgrimage of the soul through worlds layered like shells. Walk them slowly, and your breath syncs with the geometry. Your blood with the pulse of the earth. You become a needle on a compass swinging to the song of the absolute. This is why ruins hum. Stand in an empty temple, long after its priests have turned to dust, and feel it, the hush like a held breath, the echo of a power that has not gone but only sleeps, curled in the crevices of the stone like a serpent dreaming of the sun. The machine is broken, but the code remains. And now, in this age of glass and wires, we have forgotten. We build for profit, not for power. Our towers climb, but they do not tune. Our walls speak, but only in the chatter of screens. The song is gone. But the old bones remember, and if you walk among them with listening in your blood, you will hear the whisper. We were not houses of prayer. We were prayer. Stone praying to sky, sky singing through stone. The oldest prayers had no words. They did not move the lips. They did not rise in smoke or song. They were carved in silence. Why? Because sound is power, but silence is the root of sound. Before the first syllable bloomed, there was a hush pregnant with vibration, a stillness dense as a star before it burns. The ancients knew. To speak to the infinite, you must first become still enough to hear it speaking through you. Words are crude tools. They carve the formless into shape, but the shape is always smaller than the truth. The more words, the more distance. The mystics saw this. That is why they broke away from the temples, from the roar of ritual and the thunder of chants, and walked into the deserts, the forests, the caves. They sat, they closed their eyes, and they listened. Days bled into nights. The chatter of thought burned away like fog in a furnace. And when the last voice in the mind fell silent, they heard it, the low hum, the root note, throbbing in the dark core of being, not outside, inside, and beyond both. This was prayer in its purest form, not speaking, but sounding without sound, not asking, but aligning. They called it Hesychia in the East, holy stillness. The yogis named it samadhi, absorption into the soundless chord. But names do not matter. The essence was this: to tune the soul so precisely that it became transparent, a lens for the absolute to gaze through itself. How does silence speak? Not in syllables, in states, in currents felt, not heard, like the pull of a tide beneath the skin of the sea. The mystic sits. His breath slows until it is no breath at all, only a whisper kissing the edge of time. Thought flickers once, twice, then gutters like a dying wick, and in the vastness that opens, he does not hear an answer. He becomes the answer. Silence is not emptiness. It is density, a black diamond packed with the weight of all songs unsung. And when the mind sinks into that density, the signal soars. No static, no interference. A direct line from the ember of the self to the blazing heart of the whole. This is why the sages warned, when you pray, go into your inner room and shut the door. Not a wooden door, the door of thought, the door of ego. Because as long as you speak from the surface, you speak into wind. But when you speak from the core, you need no sound. The field hears, the field answers. Silence was the code above codes, the pure frequency before the clutter of syllables fractured the wave. And those who mastered it walked through the world like tuning forks, humming with a music no ear could catch, but every heart could feel. People touched them and wept, not knowing why, because the signal poured from them like light through glass, wordless, formless, burning holes in the fabric of the finite. Now we fear silence. We flee from it into screens, into songs that smother the hush. We treat it like a void, an absence to be filled. But silence is not the absence of sound. It is the matrix of all sound, the loom on which the syllables of creation are woven. To reclaim prayer, we must reclaim silence, not as escape, but as entry, the secret door no key can unlock, because it is already open inside the hollow of your breath. Sit. Let the words fall away like autumn leaves. Let thought sink like a stone in deep water, and when you reach the floor of that still sea, you will feel it, the hum of the infinite, thrumming through your bones like distant thunder. Then you will know, the loudest prayer is the one never spoken. Every device needs a receiver. If prayer was the signal, then who or what answered? The simple answer is God. The word rolls easily from the tongue, a balm for the mind. But what is this God? A being? A mind vast as the night, burning with omniscience? Or something stranger, something that does not fit in the cage of human thought? The truth may be larger. It may also be darker. The ancients left hints. They spoke of gods in plural voices that came in dreams, shapes coiled in smoke and lightning, beings who walked among men and fed on incense and blood. Were these metaphors? Masks for forces of nature? Or were they real? And if real, what were they? Perhaps they were archetypes, not beings with bones and breath, but patterns, vast currents in the ocean of the collective mind. Jung called them the primordial images, forms that rise from the deep unconscious and wear faces shaped by culture, yet are older than culture, older than man. When you prayed, perhaps you tuned into those currents. You aligned with the great fields of meaning that swirl beneath the skin of history, and those fields, like magnets, bent your life, drew you into their orbit, answered not in words, but in the geometry of events. But there is another theory, older, whispered by mystics and mocked by priests, that the gods were real and still are. Not in the sense of flesh and blood, but as intelligences woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. Call them angels, call them devas, call them something nameless nodes in the great net of being, conscious centers in the architecture of infinity. They are not human, they are not bound by time, but they are not abstract. They have will, they have hunger, and when the signal of prayer reached them, they answered sometimes with blessings, sometimes with bargains. Because power does not flow one way, the signal you send is also an offering. Every prayer feeds the field, charges the pattern, fattens the God. The more you pray, the more the receiver swells a feedback loop of worship and will spinning like a wheel of fire until it blazes into form. This is why the old temples dripped with golden blood, why chants rose like smoke for days without end, not because the gods needed flattery, but because they fed on frequency. And devotion is a frequency thick as honey, sweet with the voltage of desire. But what if the receiver was never outside you? What if it was you, not the mask of flesh, but the deep kernel, the ember of pure awareness that peers through 1,000 eyes in 1,000 worlds? The mystic said as much. The one who prays and the one who is prayed to are the same. A riddle or a revelation? Perhaps both. Perhaps prayer was not a cry to the heavens, but a way to wake the sleeping giant in your own marrow, the self older than stars, dreaming it was small, and waiting for the song that would stir it into flame. And yet, the testimonies trouble the mind. Prophets who heard voices that shook their bones, kings who built empires on commands that fell from the sky, ordinary men who called, and something came with power enough to part seas, to rain fire, to bend the spines of nations. Was that self or something else listening in the black corridors between the worlds? We like to think the universe is empty, that the only minds are the ones behind human eyes. But what if it is crowded with watchers, with weavers, with intelligences as old as gravity and as patient as stone? If so, then every prayer was a flare in the dark, a beacon saying, "Here, I am here, answer me." And the dark answered, not always as light, because not all who listen love, not all who answer give. The old grimoires warned, call only those whose names you know, because a signal is not selective. It arcs through the abyss, and whoever catches it may choose to speak back or feed. So who answered? God? The gods? The deep self? Or something stranger still, something that wears all masks, because it is the mirror in which masks are born? Perhaps the question is wrong. Perhaps prayer was never about who hears. Perhaps it was about what you become in the act of sending the signal, a tuning fork for the absolute, a spark bridging the silence between the finite and the flame. And in that moment of resonance, the illusion of two collapses. There is no caller, no called, only the hum that holds the worlds like beads on an endless string of sound. Once prayer was fire, a current burning through bone and breath, a force that bent the fabric of the seen with the weight of the unseen. But now it is a whisper in an empty hall, words piled like stones without mortar, lifeless syllables falling into the hollow where meaning used to live. The signal faded, not because the heavens closed, but because we forgot how to send. It began with forgetting the silence, the still point that cradled the song. We drowned it in noise drums of war, chants shouted by throats thick with fear. Prayers spat like arrows toward a sky we imagined was hostile. The quiet codes vanished first, replaced by formulas repeated until the tongue was numb. The sacred syllables, those keys carved in ratios of light, were worn smooth by careless mouths. Their edges dulled until they fit no lock. Then came the buildings. The temples that once throbbed with resonance became cages for ritual. We built them higher, heavier. but hollow, stripped of the geometry that once tuned stone to star. We filled them with gold, not sound, with dogma, not design. The spires still clawed at the clouds, but they no longer sang, because no one remembered the song. And so the priests spoke louder, as if volume could bridge the void. They made prayer a transaction, pay with obedience, purchase a blessing. They shackled the wild force with chains of law and fear until it was no longer a river but a trickle, caged and sold in the marketplace of souls. What had been communion became commerce. What had been resonance became rhetoric. The mind followed the same path. We traded vision for reason, symbol for syntax. We dissected the world into gears and laws and lost the hum beneath the motion. Science rose, and with it, silence of another kind, the silence of denial, where every mystery was nailed to the board of matter and left to bleed its wonder away. Prayer became embarrassing, a relic, a superstition for the weak, and in casting it aside, we cast away something deeper, the art of tuning, the ability to bend the needle of the soul toward the hidden frequency of the real. But here is the bitter truth. The signal never died. The field never closed. It still hums everywhere, waiting for the chord that will unlock it. The loss was ours, and like all losses, it was slow, so slow we did not feel the cut until the wound had scabbed over and turned to scar. Now we kneel in pews and mumble words we do not taste. We click beads, we bow, we fold our hands, but the gestures are hollow, their shells long since emptied of power. We pray for things, for gold, for favor, for our enemies to break under the wheel. We pray as beggars because we have forgotten the truth, that prayer was never about asking, it was about becoming. And yet, not all is lost. Fragments remain, like shards of a broken mirror, still glinting with the light of the whole. A chant whispered in a Himalayan cave, a bell tolling in a cloister at dawn, its tone folding the air into spirals of quiet fire, a monk tracing breath in a desert older than scripture. They remember, or something in them remembers. The old code hums in their blood like a sleeping serpent, and in their silence, the signal rises, thin as smoke, but enough to prove the truth. The line is not dead. It was never dead. It only waits. One day, when the towers of glass have crumbled and the noise of empires has burned to ash, someone will kneel on the naked earth, close their eyes, and feel it again, the vibration threading the marrow, the chord spanning the abyss. And in that hum, the whole forgotten symphony will surge, and prayer will blaze like lightning reborn. The signal never died. It sleeps beneath the noise, like a river buried under concrete, still flowing, still singing, waiting for a crack to break the asphalt and let it rise. Prayer was never broken. We were. But what is broken can be mended. What is forgotten can be remembered. The question is not how to speak again. It is how to listen first. Because to pray is not to fill the air with words. It is to tune, to turn the dial until the static falls away and the hum of the infinite floods your braction. Bones. Where do we begin? With breath. Always breath. Because breath is the hinge between worlds, the silent thread stitching flesh to spirit. Follow it, slow it, shape it into rhythm, a tide moving in and out until the mind rides its waves and the clutter of thought drowns in stillness. Then sound, not speech. Sound pure, simple, a tone drawn from the root of your being like water from a deep well. Let it roll in the hollow of the chest, hum in the bones, vibrate the skull until every cell quivers like a string struck by a hidden bow. One syllable is enough, not because of meaning, but because of music, the geometry folded in the curve of its sound, a seed of resonance echoing the ratios that bind galaxies and hearts alike. And when the sound fades, fall into silence, because silence is the field where the signal blooms. This is not ritual, it is recalibration. You are not speaking to a god perched on a throne of clouds. You are aligning with the field that flares through every atom, the vast net of being humming beneath the skin of all things. And in that alignment, answers do not come as words. They come as shifts, a sudden loosening of the knot you carried for years, a door opening where walls had stood, a peace that slides through your veins like a river of warm light, burning out the static of fear. That is the reply. Not thunder, not visions, but the click of resonance, the fit of a key in a lock older than time. Do you need temples for this? Number. Because the temple was always you. Your body is the chamber, your breath the bellows, your bones the tuning forks, your mind the altar where silence burns. The stone machines are ruins now, their echoes fading like smoke and wind. But the living machine walks, it breathes, it waits for the operator to remember the code. And what is the code? Not a formula scrawled in ink, not a chant stolen from a tongue you do not understand. The code is coherence, intention honed to a single blade, emotion braided with thought until they hum as one chord. Add breath, add tone, add silence, like the black cloth that makes the diamond blaze. This is the sequence: stillness, rhythm, resonance, release. But do not treat it as steps. Treat it as a spiral. Move through it not with haste, but with the gravity of one who knows they are dialing the heart of the cosmos. Will you hear a voice? Perhaps, perhaps not, but you will feel the shift, a deep, tectonic turning in the marrow of the self, a sense that something vast has leaned close, listened, and answered without sound. Because the goal was never speech. The goal was union, and union is wordless. We stand at the edge of an age of iron and static. Our prayers are drowned in the clamor of machines. Our temples are screens. Our chants replaced by the white noise of networks. But the old device still hums in the blood. The dial still turns. And if you learn to listen, you will find the frequency not in the heavens, but in the hollow of your chest where silence waits like a seed dreaming of fire. So sit, close your eyes, strip the prayer of words until only vibration remains. Strip even vibration until only stillness shines, black and bright as the womb of stars. And in that stillness, you will feel it, the answering hum, the signal leaping across the abyss, the secret thread binding what prays and what is prayed to into a single singing flame. Because prayer was never asking, it was remembering that you were the device all along.